Hey everyone, it's Brian from Exact IT and Cybersecurity. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're doing another cybersecurity roundup where we give you the goods and the latest on what's impacting you and cybersecurity in the last week or so. There's timestamps down below in the description that hit all the different topics. You can go to the one you are interested in by clicking the timestamp in the description. Before we get into the topics for today, please remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell if you want to be notified when we post videos similar to this one. So let's get into the topics for this week. And if you thought ransomware was on the decline, folks, think again. This past week has been a wild ride through the world of cybersecurity, with attacks hitting everything from hospitals to libraries, auction houses. I got all kinds of things to update you on and discuss. So the first one on the docket is the FOG ransomware group. A major warning to the education sector that the FOG ransomware group has set its targets on your industry. Not only have they decided that we're going to go after education, but they also decided to throw in recreation centers in there as well. So they're going to prey on the fact that parents want to get their kids somewhere, either to a school or to somewhere to do some extracurricular activities, and they're not going to be able to drop their kid off. And that's going to put pressure on these businesses to pay the ransom and get things back up and running. According to my research, it looks like these guys aren't messing around. They like to target your virtual machines, which if you're running something like VMware, you could be a target for this FOG ransomware group. We know that these educational and recreational facilities are typically underfunded. That's another reason why this group has decided to target it. And these organizations are typically understaffed in the cybersecurity department. This makes these businesses an easy target for attackers because there's a very good chance that they don't have the technology or the training in place to make sure that their employees don't fall victim to some kind of phishing attack or some other scam that these guys are running in order to try to get their ransomware on your network. Recreational facilities need to be aware of what this group likes to do, and one of their favorite things to do is to exploit VPN credentials. Make sure you have a good, solid security plan around your VPN, around your credentials. Make sure you have things like multi-factor in place and you're using strong passwords. I highly recommend that you implement a password manager and you train your employees on how to use the VPN securely and what to look out for when it comes to threats like this. The interesting thing about this FOG group, folks, is that they actually don't exfiltrate data. They only encrypt. This suggests that FOG ransomware group might be in this for a quick payout and less so in this for more sophisticated extortion schemes that we see when data is actually stolen and exfiltrated from the network. Second big story this week, folks, we get into is this London hospital under siege. Ransomware attack across the pond here from the US hit several major hospitals in London, causing significant disruptions to services. And this is a scary reminder of how critical these healthcare industries are and how much of a target they are for cyber criminals right now. The US surely has seen their fair share of hospitals being attacked recently, and now we see it across the pond. It doesn't matter what country you're in, these organizations know how these hospitals operate, they know their weak points, and they know how to exploit them, and they know how to extort them as well. So on Monday this week, a spokesperson for the state-run National Health Service in England London region said in a statement that this is having a significant impact on the delivery of services at Guy's and St. Thomas's, King's College Hospitals, NHS Foundation Trust, and primary care services at Southeast London. So they said they were working urgently with the country's main cybersecurity agency, the NCSC, and its own cybersecurity operations team to fully understand the impact of the incident. But this is starting to impact their ability to deliver healthcare services, as we've seen with prior attacks. And it's just another sign that the healthcare industry is a prime target and they need to start taking cybersecurity seriously. Hey, but it's not all bad news, right? The cyber criminals don't always win. Sometimes these guys are actually brought to justice, even though it's very difficult to do, as we have a police crackdown this week on these cyber criminals. In a massive police operation across Europe, authorities took down several ransomware networks and arrested 4 suspects. This is considered a small victory for law enforcement, but a victory nonetheless. These types of events do tend to cause cause concern with ransomware groups. They can scatter, they can kind of scale back on their operations for a little while as they think the heat is on. There's now 4 members of their group that are now with law enforcement who can potentially give law enforcement information, and that's why these groups tend to scatter and change their tactics and change their ways, change phone numbers, change where they're operating from. All different kinds of things happen when they believe that somebody from the inside might be compromised. No different than any other criminal organization that operates in a similar manner. But this takedown does highlight things like what this operation was, known as Operation Endgame, that it seems that these multi-country law enforcement efforts are having somewhat of an impact on these ransomware groups, meaning that the geographic area where these people can actually operate from without getting a visit from law enforcement is shrinking. So the areas in the world where they can operate is becoming very finite, very limited to certain regions of the world. So you can't just go anywhere you want and do this stuff. You're going to have to live in certain places. You're going to have to operate out of certain places. And once you kind of are found out and you're on a list, it's going to be hard for you to travel anywhere else without having people either watching you or arresting you like we see in this case. So we'll continue to monitor this and update everybody on law enforcement efforts, especially over in Europe, since they're geographically close to where a lot of this cyber criminal activity happens in Eastern Europe. So bringing it back a little closer to home, we had a library system who was impacted by ransomware in the last week, and that was the Seattle Public Library System were forced offline due to a ransomware attack. This impacted the residents of that city's ability to take out books. While the library has resorted to pen and paper and they are able to manually lend out books, this has really hamstringed their digital side of their operations, taking down online access for books, for other resources, and it's just created a nightmare for this organization. At the same time, recently Toronto's public library system was also hit. At this time, our research doesn't suggest that they're related, but it is interesting the 2 library systems got hit, which also begs the question, was there some kind of vulnerability in some software that these libraries use that cyber criminals were able to take advantage of and do this? Like I said, we'll update you once we know more and we learn more, but that's where we are at right now with this Seattle Public Library. And moving on to a new ransomware strain called ShrinkLocker, and its sneaky trick to use Windows BitLocker to encrypt your hard drive, essentially living off the lam and using Windows' own built-in encryption feature to basically be the ransomware it runs. So essentially, unlike normal ransomware that actually runs and takes each file and encrypts it runs through its own encryption algorithm, this malware just takes advantage of the encryption already built into Windows. And what it does is it takes over. So if you have it disabled, it enables it. But if you already have it enabled, it just takes over maybe what your IT company or your IT department already set up. And one of the things that happens is that BitLocker creates what's known as an encryption key when you enable that service. That encryption key needs to be recorded or stored somewhere, because if your hard drive happens to be removed or a change is detected with your system, BitLocker protects your system by requiring the hard drive to be unencrypted with this special key. And what these cyber criminals are doing is they're resetting the BitLocker. They're creating their own key that uses their own algorithm. And then once they create that key, they know what it is based on when their algorithm ran. And now your hard drive is now encrypted. And the only way to get it unencrypted is to reach out to this ransomware group and have them give you the key to unlock your hard drive. It's a sneaky, tricky tool. It's a classic example of living off of the lam. I don't know how successful it'll really be, because there's a lot of ways, number one, you can stop this. But it is interesting that, a person or a group of people spent the time trying to figure out how to kind of create malware that kind of works like ransomware, but not really, and basically causes a bad day for people by encrypting their stuff. And when they reboot, they're not able to get into their system anymore. I'm not sure how well this will work. I don't think it'll work that well at the end of the day. And make sure that you're putting these protections in place. Don't allow BitLocker to be tampered with, because you're logging in with an administrator account if you're doing that. So don't use administrator accounts as your daily driver accounts. Use a local regular user account that doesn't have admin rights. I know it's annoying. I know you can't install software, you can't do certain things, but it also prevents cyber criminals from taking advantage of those escalating unregulated privileges that those accounts have under the radar. You click on something, you do something, and you don't know all these things are happening behind the scenes. There's no box, there's no window that pops up and says, hey, we're doing this. Something is running behind the scenes and you don't know it's there. You don't know they're doing things, and they're now enabling BitLocker, and they're putting this key on there that you don't know, and before you know it, they're doing things and telling you you need to pay them a ransom or your computer's going to reboot and you're not going to be able to get into it. That's what's up with the ShrinkLocker malware. And despite what I said earlier about these law enforcement takedowns happening over in Europe, a new report from Mandiant shows that ransomware attacks are actually on the rise. No surprise. There was a lot of chatter out there that insurance companies and other people thought that businesses kind of got ahead of ransomware. I was surprised when I saw those reports, and I was like, I don't think that that's going to be the case. And while certainly at points in times things have slowed down, I do think that things are going to pick up. And I don't think we've seen the height of ransomware attacks and all the things that we're going to deal with around cybersecurity. We're not anywhere near the height of what's going to come in the future, to be honest with you. Let's dig into this Mandiant report a little bit, as it indicates that cyber criminals are becoming more sophisticated and persistent. What Mandiant has come out with is data based on data leak sites from 2020 to 2023. In Q4 of 2021, we saw a spike, and then it kind of went back down for several quarters, and then we started to see a trend where things started to go up in Q1 of 2023, but Q2, 3, and 4 of 2023 is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the new normal, and these charts are only going to continue to trend upward and grow in the amount of attacks that happen as ransomware groups get better, more ransomware groups emerge, and also people decide that they want to go to the dark side because this is such a lucrative criminal operation to get involved with. If you feel like it's low risk in terms of your chance of being brought to justice by law enforcement, there's a lot of people that are going to jump on this bandwagon and try to get rich off deploying ransomware on some company someday, where people are going to learn about cybersecurity, they're going to learn how to do this stuff, and they're either going to use it for good or they're going to use it for bad. And it's probably going to be a 50-50 split right down the middle, where a lot of people who are good at this stuff are going to go on the dark side and try to make money in a short period of time because it's so lucrative. As we go into 2024, 2025, these bar charts will increase and go up. If you drew a line from Q1 2021 all the way up, it's just going to keep going up and up and up. That 1500 that you see on the left there is going to be 2000, 2500, 3000. It's just going to keep going up and up. Why is it going to keep going up and up and up, guys? Because we have evidence all over the place that companies are not doing the right thing when it comes to cybersecurity. And I've already harped on the healthcare industry, but we're going to rip that band-aid off once again, as our government, our US senators are finally coming out and saying that in the US, Change Healthcare did not do a good enough job of securing their networks, and that's why they got hit with ransomware. US Senate Finance Chair slammed Change Healthcare for negligence and ransomware attacks. We're seeing these terms thrown around more and more with lawmakers. Negligence, at the end of the day, lawmakers are getting sick and tired of hearing major healthcare organizations, major hospitals, major businesses, critical infrastructure getting hit with ransomware, bringing these CEOs in ever since Colonial Pipeline, which is now 3 or 4 years old. It's the same thing over and over. We had exposed credentials on the internet that were used. We weren't using multi-factor authentication. 3-4 years into knowing that we have to do this stuff because it's going to be exploited by cyber criminals, and you're still not doing it, and it led to one of the worst ransomware attacks on our US healthcare in the history of the internet. That's not a good sign. Things like this shouldn't be happening. And these senators are really coming down on these organizations and these CEOs, questioning who they hire for their CISO roles, as we see in this hearing with Change Healthcare, where they question the hiring of their Chief Information Security Officer, who was hired in June of 2023, saying that he had not worked in a full-time cybersecurity role before, and he was elevated to the top cybersecurity position at United Healthcare Group. Other experts have chimed in and said the cyber attack against United Healthcare Group could have been prevented had United Healthcare Group followed industry best practices. UHG's failure to follow those best practices and the harm that resulted is the responsibility of the company's senior officials, including UHG's CEO and board of directors. While UHG has not yet made public the full details of the incident, UHG's failure to require MFA is unlikely to be the company's only cybersecurity lab. After several of these hearings that these senators and these people that run these hearings hearings hear the same thing over and over, and they know that if you are not doing one thing right, there's probably other things that you're not doing right as well, more than likely, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Unfortunately for all businesses, this means that our government is going to come after your businesses. You're going to have to spend more on cybersecurity, and I know this isn't what you want to hear, but at the end of the day, I think our government in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be requiring businesses to do things around cybersecurity or face investigations from organizations like the FTC and the SEC. Speaking of the SEC, companies are now required to disclose when they have a material data breach that impacts them. In an April filing with the Security and Exchange Commission, Frontier Communication revealed that an intrusion was identified on April 14th that resulted in certain systems being shut down to contain the attack. They filed this in their quarterly report with the SEC in May, and the Dallas-based company reiterated that the attackers likely stole certain data from its systems, including personal information. It says, based on our investigation, we have determined that third party was likely a cybercrime group which gained access to, among other information, personally identifiable information. The reason I wanted to talk about this story, number one, is this is the reason why the SEC, number one, wanted to put this regulation in place where companies needed to report this within a certain time frame, because companies for a long time, publicly traded ones that is, were able to hide this stuff, and private companies are able to hide this stuff as it stands now. But like I said a few minutes ago, I think these regulations are going to change in the next 3 to 5 years, and private companies, almost all of them, are going to have to report in some way, shape, or form, just like publicly traded companies do. And it also goes to show you that organizations are being breached left and right. Data about their customers and their employees is all over the dark web, and it's going to be a massive problem for people in the future with things like identity fraud and other types of fraud that can happen to individuals, because cyber criminals are now looking at all this data that's been stolen from businesses over the decades, and they're trying to work on new schemes, new ways to monetize and make money off of this information that they have that's being freely traded on the dark web by thousands of people. And then what happens when these companies let their data spill over into public places like the dark web and the internet, and it starts to be abused? Well, customers and employees start to get upset, and they have lawyers who contact them, or as I've seen recently, I've seen Facebook ads that promote certain cyber attacks and contact this law firm. We now have the auction house Christie's, who dealt with a ransomware attack a couple weeks ago. They weren't immune to ransomware, and they're also not immune to what I warn about on this channel all the time, the repercussions of these ransomware attacks and the class action lawsuits that follow them. I actually remember seeing a comment in the last week from somebody on, I think it was my Ward Trucking video, where they asked me, what do you mean class action lawsuits? Yeah, like there are lawyers out there that are basically what are known as ambulance chasers that look for the employees and the customers of these companies that get attacked by these ransomware groups, and they contact them and try to get them to be part of a class action lawsuit. It doesn't mean that they're all going to come to fruition and actually happen, but a lot of them do, especially if they can find fault with these companies. So we'll see what happens with Christie's and whether their customers successfully execute this class action lawsuit. But there's definitely lawyers who are on that path to making this happen and filing that class action lawsuit and trying to get monies for these victims of this ransomware event, because they feel like Christie's didn't do enough to protect their systems, which led to this data being exposed. All right, that was a lot to take in. As you can see, ransomware is a serious threat out there to businesses, and so are cyber attacks that involve data breaches. Companies need to do more. It's a big problem out there. Our government is going to step in. There's a lot of angst around this. Lawmakers are getting frustrated. Consumers are getting frustrated. Employees are getting frustrated. People are getting frustrated knowing that their data is out there and in the hands of cyber criminals. It's a scary thing, but none of this is going away anytime soon. I'd love to hear what you think about this stuff down in the comments below. Remember, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Take care, everyone. Stay safe out there.